Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 53 of the Runnin the Paint podcast. I'm Miles. I'm here with Joey. Joey, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty tired. It was a long week of work, but it's Friday. I'm excited to have a long weekend. And the finals are still going on. We didn't get a sweep. We get another day of basketball.
The season did not end today. Thank goodness it didn't end today, but it was a very not entertaining game. A very dominant performance by the Dallas Mavericks in this one, winning Game 4 of the 2024 NBA Finals, 122-84. Yes, that score is correct. The third largest Finals victory ever in NBA history, and the Mavericks, their season's still alive. They now trail the Celtics 3 games to 1 in these finals, and they are still alive to win the NBA championship. But man, this game, I was not expecting this to happen. I know a lot of people were probably 50-50 on this game. We were both thinking that it might end tonight, but the Mavericks, I don't think anyone expected them to win the way they did tonight.
Definitely not. That's the thing. We were talking like 50-50. I was thinking like they were just going to finish it off in a sweep, but at least hopefully it was competitive. Now, yes, I am happy that basketball is still going on, but it happened in possibly the worst way where it just was over at the end of the first quarter. The Dallas had the momentum at the end of the first quarter and then carried it in the second where going into halftime it was like 63 to like 35,
Yeah, it was
something
like
like
it was a
that.
30. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It was really incredible. I think that it's disappointing that this wasn't the Mavericks performance that we got in game 3. Like that is super disappointing, I think, for most Maverick fans, that we didn't get this sort of performance and desperation a little bit earlier, because this is the Mavericks team that we expected coming into this series.
Well, if we want to talk about unexpected things, we could talk about the Dallas defense led by Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic played incredible on defense. First off, these last 3 games have been just the worst we've ever seen from an individual performance. And then he says, I need to stop whining. I need to do better. Took all the responsibility on game 3 on himself to his coaches and the rest of the team. And then he performed it. Like he came out as exactly as you expect out of the leader and the best player on your team. Did shoot a little bit better from some areas, but it was really his defense that stood out today.
Which, like you said, is just incredible, because between games, I mean, there were a lot of people going in on Luka Doncic. I mean, on this podcast, we were both going in on him. It was happening all across the world where people were going in on his defense, and rightfully so, because the way that he was performing on that end of the floor, along with complaining to the officials, it's unacceptable at this point of the season. And he really turned it around in this game. That you really didn't see him complaining a whole lot to the officials. In this one defensively, he was spectacular. In the first quarter, he got off to a great start offensively, as did really the whole Mavericks team. They got off to a very similar start in this game to what they did in game 3, um, with Kyrie Irving, Luka attacking the paint. But I think the key thing in this first quarter was the other guys that got going, because it wasn't just Kyrie and Luka doing damage. It came from a lot of other unexpected areas, like Derek Lively here hitting a three, the first of his
From
career.
3, put him in the 3-point contest.
I cannot believe he made a three in the NBA Finals. That is unbelievable.
What's your fun trivia fact you told me in the pre-pod lobby? Youngest 3-point make in youngest player to hit a 3-pointer in the finals.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
Incredible stuff there. But he did all the things that we've, come to expect from him at this point, of his career. Even this year, really, he's been so spectacular on the boards defensively and getting buckets around the paint, whether it's dunks or lobs. in the first 2 games of this series, he looked like a 20-year-old rookie playing in his first finals. In these last 2 games, 2 double doubles, the youngest player in finals history to record double doubles. He did it again this game. Had 7 offensive rebounds in this game, which was obviously huge. He had 7 offensive rebounds. The Celtics had 4 as a team in this game.
He was one of the big X factors I had coming into this series because going against Minnesota, you're clearly outmatched on the height wise and that front court, but and then like he still played fantastic. So I'm like, hey, if he could at least, he's not going to play as great as KP when he comes back, but he just needs to compete. And those first 2 games he did it, and it was blowouts. And we're like, this series is probably over. These last 2 games, even though they split them, Derek Lively has been fantastic. You could clearly see the presence of KP missing, and he is thriving. Like, hopefully this helps build his confidence, because I really do, because of how young he is. It has to be a confidence issue, because I believe he can go toe to toe with KP, at least. Well, like I said, at least compete with him, maybe not exceed him, but that's what you need. You just need to help build his confidence. He's a young guy. You're on the biggest stage. Just breathe, play your game. And yeah, like you said, the offensive rebounds also like stood out for me. Like, he was just active.
Home court advantage is something that it's really helped. It really helps with young guys. It helps with your role players. All these guys, even though it may not say in the stat sheet, these role players played a lot better at home than they did the first couple games in the series. And we were talking in the pre-pod lobby how in games like this, the box score just looks so weird because like you look in the starting lineup for the Mavericks, you've got Derek Jones only played 17 minutes, PJ 14 minutes, Gafford 10 minutes. It's so weird, but it's all skewed because the coaches put in their subs like in the third quarter of this game. And I don't know if I've ever seen this happen in a playoff game, let alone in the NBA finals.
I was about to say, this might be an NBA record. I would say I would think of like players playing in a single game in an NBA finals, because usually it's like, or at least it's been a long time, because like in a single game, because usually it's like an 8-man rotation at the very most.
Yeah, 14 guys played for Boston, 15 for Dallas. and,
Jeez.
and everything's just so spread out across when you look at the minutes for the Dallas Mavericks. But other role players that played very well, we got Dante Exum playing extended minutes in the first half, and he was great. He's
Part
been
of
really good this series.
He brings that energy, what they need off the bench, someone to just provide that spark. Even though it's early, you can't let Kyrie, especially if you're going to be in a close game for the rest of the series, you can't let Kyrie sit in the second half. You need him out there. So it's that first half where you need to maximize his rest and have Dante Exum come in for those 5 to 10 minutes just to provide some sort of spark, a couple points, and just that energy. We, as Cavs fans, we get it from Karis LeVert. That Dante Exum is that kind of for the Mavericks. Like, he just provides instant offense.
You can tell when Exum comes in the game. He has his own little pace to him when he comes in the game. When he gets the board and looks to attack at the
Yeah.
other end, he just has his own pace to him. He had a couple plays where, well, I know in the first half he tried to get it to Luca. It was around half court. I don't remember who was guarding Luca, but they were denying him from getting the pass from Exum, and Exum just attacked. I think Hauser was guarding him, and he got a layup inside. He just did a great job countering, and he's someone that I think could be huge in this series. We've all thought that on this podcast. We've wanted to see him play more than he
We
had
were
the first 3 games.
Hey, he's a Cavs legend. When he was in Cleveland for that short time, we loved him. We thought he had very high potential. But speaking of another guy who just needs to get going and finally had like a decent game, let alone garbage time, but Tim Hardaway finally was hitting some shots.
Yes, he came in the fourth quarter and made 5 of 7 threes after not scoring. in the first 3 games of the series. Just crazy stuff, man. I mean, he's someone we've talked about it a lot before. How they need that third guy, that third scorer, really to get going. And he was their third leading scorer during the regular season. Really did nothing in the second half of the year and in these playoffs besides Game 2 of the OKC series. So if they could get him going, it would be huge for them. Obviously, they still have a huge mountain to climb here if they want to be the first team to come back from a 3-0 deficit. They'll need guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. to step up as we go forward.
100%. And I was mentioning in the pre-pod lobby because when we were looking at the stats, I mentioned how Luka Doncic 0 for 8 from 3, Kyrie Irving 1 for 6 from 3. Like they both shot pretty well from the field outside of that, both like hovering around that 50. I don't know about Luka, but at least Kyrie shot 9 for 12 outside of the 3-point line. Like he couldn't miss a shot. But with Tim Hardaway hitting 5 for 7, even though again garbage time, you need that. You need him to get that confidence. You need him to feel it because if those guys are being double teamed right from the 3-point line and can't get good looks and can't hit any shots, somebody else is going to at least need to hit a couple of those shots, let alone if it's Josh Green, who played really well as well. Derek Lively, maybe he'll hit another 30. I'm not going to bet on it, but Josh Green, Dante Exum, maybe Tim Hardaway, Derek Jones, possibly. He was hitting a couple threes in the series before. He hasn't been able to do any of that this series.
Yeah, I think so. I mentioned in the last episode, I was keeping track of the amount of catch and shoot 3-point attempts from the teams and how the Mavericks only, I believe they were like 2 for 5 or something,
Yeah.
as far as catch and shoot threes in Game 3, which is just not enough. That means, I mean, you're only generating 5 quality 3-point looks in a game. That's ridiculous. And I think when you look at Game 4, I didn't get the total numbers, but Kyrie and Luka combining for 1 for 14 from 3. With those two guys, it's a lot of isolation, difficult step back threes.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of them, they go as a team, they shot 15 for 37 from 3. And you take away Luka and Kyrie, that's 14 for 23 from 3. And nearly all of those were catch and shoot threes. They generate a whole lot more of them. And that's how you get all these guys knocking down more 3-pointers.
They need to keep that momentum. I don't know what adjustments Jason Kidd or any of those coaches made, but clearly the offense was so stagnant with just revolving around Luka and Kyrie to let them do their thing, which 90% of the time works. But since it hasn't been working this series, and especially recently, you needed to change something up. And they did. And they shot fantastic. Like, that's the thing. Luka and Kyrie can take, and they have the confidence to shoot those kind of difficult shots. The other role players, nobody else can do that. They need those wide open shots. They'll make them most of the time, which they showed today, but they just need to get them. So they need to be doing off ball screens. They need to just have a more creative offense and spacing. And it worked out tonight. Like, this was the definition of recipe of success for the rest of the guys.
Yeah, and the question is, of course, whether they can keep this going, whether this is an anomaly or can they keep this going. Another funny historic stat from this game that I'll throw at you is Tim Hardaway Jr. is now one of 3 players to hit 5 threes in a single quarter of a finals game. Steph Curry, Ray Allen, and Tim Hardaway Jr., the 3 players ever to make 5 threes in a quarter of a finals game. And it's funny that Tim Hardaway didn't play in the first 3 quarters of the game, and then that sets a record for threes in a quarter.
Hey, empty the benches. Tim Hardaway. Okay, it's my time to shine.
Look, this is what we always talk about. Like we say, this game, it really wasn't close after the first, 5-6 minutes, and it was garbage time for most of the whole way. But these minutes are super important for guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. that have not been able to get a good rhythm at all. He's able to get a whole quarter of reps from 3. He got up 7 3-point attempts in a fourth quarter in 12 minutes, made 5 of them. that could be a huge confidence booster going forward because if, like I said before, if they could get him going off the bench and they could get more, 3-point shots from the bench and Hardaway, that'd be a huge boost for the Mavericks offense for the
I'm
offense.
I'm not gonna say Dallas is gonna come back because we've never seen someone come back from 3-0. I'm gonna keep believing in it until I see it. I don't think they can come back. However, you're 100% right. It's the reps. This is such a young team. This is a team that hasn't been to the finals outside of Kyrie and Jason Kidd, the head coach. Like, they don't have these finals reps. A lot of them are super young. They've never even reached like this far into the playoffs. Like, this is all new territory for them. They need to just get that confidence. Luka Doncic is for him too. Derek Lively, we talked about Tim Hardaway, Dante. It's all these guys, PJ Washington, Gafford, like everybody just needs these reps. So it's super important for the Mavericks, even if they don't win the series. It's experience you need if you do want to take that next step to eventually win.
Yeah, of course. Now we talked a lot about the Mavericks. Let's shift over to the Boston Celtics, who of course had a chance to sweep their way to the title. They had won their previous 10 playoff games, which is even crazy to think about. A franchise record 10-game playoff winning streak snapped today with a 38-point loss in Game 4. And this was a sort of game where just they well, I'll throw the question to you. Was this a situation where you feel like the Celtics were just like, okay, we're up 3-0. We'll just have game 5 at home. We can win the title game 5 at home. Or did they just not play well? Did they just have a bad game?
I think it's a combination of both. Like if you're talking about the coaching staff and like the mindset of the higher ups, they just didn't play well. If you're the mindset of the players, personally, it looks like that they just like, well, we'll go out there if we're playing well, yay, maybe we'll go for the sweep. But since they got off such a poor start right from the very start of the game, they were just like, okay, well, I guess we'll win in Boston. We'll win in front of the home fans, or at least they're going to try to. I don't think it's a good plan because in my opinion, you don't want to give anybody any kind of momentum. You never know how it's going to go. Like in 2016, we're talking, well, no one's come back from a 3-1 deficit. I'm saying right here, no one's come back from a 3-0 deficit. Could be the same thing. You just never know.
Yeah,
You don't
you
give
never see.
anybody that momentum.
I totally agree. I feel like to me, I think that this was just, every team, no matter how good you are, sometimes you just have these flat out garbage, terrible games where things just don't go right for you. Like 50-50 balls, they just weren't going the way of the Celtics. They were getting good shots in the first quarter. They just weren't going down. Um, the paint points that was kind of, I mean, it was the same thing to start game 3.
Yeah.
Um, it. I think this was just a flat out terrible game where you really couldn't get anything going. I think that the paint defense is something that they do need to talk about going forward because, um, the numbers in game 3 in the first quarter, it was like 20-6 in the paint points in the first quarter. You look in this game, the Mavericks had 60 points in the paint, 34 in the first half, while the Celtics had 35 as a team total in the whole first half. I think that's something that's going to be very important for them that they need to address going forward because I don't think, offensively, I think they just had a poor offensive game as far as shots didn't go down. Defensively, they had a bad game. That they did not play well enough. And of course, the Mavericks, you don't want to get swept in the finals. You don't want to lose the championship at home in your own building. They were playing with all sorts of desperation. Those two things combined get you an outcome like this.
Yeah, 100%. And I mentioned it in the positive light for the Mavericks and how Derek Lively and the rest of the guys they attacked because KP wasn't there. It's the same thing, but for a negative effect for the Boston Celtics. That interior defense, they just completely just got destroyed in there. KP wasn't there. Al Horford, nobody's scared of him in the paint, like clearly. And then when they try to go small ball, same thing happened. Like they would blow by them and get in the paint. Like they were just attacking, and it's perfect for the Mavs. But like for Boston, they need to like just toughen up a little bit on the inside, especially if KP is going to continue to be out. Which, by the way, mentioning KP is a reason why I think like the higher ups and like the coaching staff, they didn't want to throw in the towel and just say, hey, let's win in Boston. They wanted to win because the report early on was, hey, he's available, but we're only going to play him in specific circumstances. That clearly
Yeah.
didn't happen because it was a blowout from right from the beginning. But I believe that if they kept it close in the whole game in the fourth quarter, they definitely would have thrown KP in there just to get that little bit of an extra edge.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was definitely smart for them not to play Porzingis in this game because he
One
was
hundred
available, but
percent.
there's no need to make him come back in this game. Um,
Especially
you know,
after
they
laying an egg like that.
yeah, exactly. No use wasting him for a game like that. Um, this was just a great performance by the Dallas Mavericks, and we're hoping that we can get another one sort of like this in Game Five, maybe more competitive. Let's go ahead and start previewing Game Five, which is going to be Monday night. Now, as the series shifts back to Boston, the Celtics will have a chance to clinch banner number 18 in front of the home crowd there in Boston, where they had the best home record in the NBA, dropped a couple in the playoffs, but you know they're now at home with a chance to clinch the title. You know that's going to be a difficult atmosphere for the Mavericks. The fans are going to be going crazy there. But you mentioned earlier about the whole Celtics. They shouldn't really be playing with the narrative that okay, this game's whatever. We could just win it at Game Five because this Mavericks team is a very, very good team. We just hadn't really seen it in the first two games of this series. There's a real chance that this game could have woken the Mavericks up and that this could have huge momentum for them going forward in Game Five.
this is that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, even though when we're talking about our previews, I still have Boston winning the series, or I am like officially changing it. After the second game, I was going to change it. Like, I wasn't going to keep the Mavericks in seven. I can see this going 7 games. Still, I can see the Dallas making a comeback because Boston, I don't like that mentality. And it clearly was that mentality from all the players. I'm just like, hey, that's okay. We can win again later. It's like you never know what's going to happen. What
No,
happens if next game, if one of your star players gets injured and KP is still hurt and you can't play either of them, and all of a sudden it's going to game 7 on your home turf and you're without 2 of your star players. You never want to play that risk. You just go for the win. They need to have that mentality. If they do that, it's going to be over next game. But I don't know. The momentum with these guys, with this younger team, it was those role players that need to get going. This game was a big confidence builder for them. If they get it going, it'll open things up for more Kyrie and Luka, and maybe they'll actually get an open three that they can hit.
yeah, I mean those role players definitely gained a lot of confidence in this game. Um, and the question is, of course, can they do it now in Boston on the road? Because we saw the first two games really wasn't the case besides Luca. And in the second half of game two, we saw Gafford and Washington have good halves. But besides that, for the most part in Boston, no one could get it going offensively or defensively, really. Um, so I'm sure that if that's going to be a big emphasis for the Mavericks is to get those other guys going early. I know this game, the first play, it was a PJ Washington post up. The first play, the second half was a Gafford post up, just to get those guys going and get them in the rhythm of the offense. I think that we're going to need to see a similar attack to start Game Five. Um, Tactically, from a coaching standpoint, I think that Jason Kidd um, will look to he should look to play Dante Exum more in the rotation like he did in this game.
Yeah, at least even in the first half. Like, I'm not saying like if it's a close game and even if you don't want to play him at all in the third quarter, I even get that. Kyrie and Luca, they should know that they probably have to play long stretches of time. It's like halves at a time without an actual like rest on the bench. But you need him in the first half because they're gonna need that rest eventually. And he's a spark. He really is. There's a lot of spark plugs on this Dallas bench where if they start going, it's instant energy for everybody. He's a huge X factor. But when they're not going, which we never saw in the last couple games, it's such a disadvantage.
Yeah, and then you wonder from the Celtics if they can get it going again from downtown because they really haven't had a game yet besides the first half of game one, and I guess game three they shot it well from beyond the arc, but they really haven't had that standout game from 3 point range yet. And that's going to be huge. The 3 point shooting. We've talked about the attempts and both teams and the Mavericks needing to try to keep their attempts similar with the Celtics. You got that in this game. The Celtics 41 3 point attempts, the Mavericks 37. The Mavs actually made one more three than the Celtics in this game,
Oh wow.
is which is huge for them, of course. Points in the paint, we definitely hit on. I think that, like we talked about before, I think the Celtics that might be the game plan if you're Boston. It's pack the paint in and don't let them just get inside. And force these shooters to knock down threes. That's kind of what we saw the first two games of this series from
Yeah.
the Celtics against Jones and Washington, letting them shoot threes.
I do know if the Mavericks want to even think about a comeback, they need to shoot north of 70% from the free throw line. Stop missing so many free throws. They shot 15 for 22 today, 68%. You yes, you blew them out, but you cannot miss 7 free throws against a Boston team like this and expect to have this kind of outcome again.
Oh, and this definitely is not going to happen in Boston again.
No.
You know the Celtics are going to come out, and they are. If you feel like they, kind of laid an egg and wanted to win it at home, it's because they're going to come out in Game 5 with the thoughts of closing it out. But they could also think, we have the home crowd and maybe the crowd will carry us. I think both teams are going to bring their best in Game 5, which is great because I feel like we haven't really had that yet in this series where both teams are going to come in bringing their best. I think we are definitely going to see that in Game 5 on Monday.
A lot of the narrative from us, I know the feeling with the pod guys, our pick'em chat, a lot of guys on social media. This isn't a good finals. It was 3-0. And then when Dallas finally wins a game, it's a complete blowout. Like, even when we finally are like, hey, the other team won, it wasn't even a good game. Like, this hasn't been that great of a finals.
No, not really.
However, I think Monday night you're going to get a different game. I think it's going to be much more competitive from here on out. Even if Dallas loses game 5, I think it'll be very, very competitive. I think those role guys needed this game, and they're going to come back and keep it going and be like, okay, I shook the nerves off. We're good. And with that, Luka and them will hit more. I still think Boston will win the series, but I'm hoping I'm just hoping, honestly. I'm trying to be an optimist. I want it to be more competitive because I am under the narrative that this final stinks. Personally, like that's like I know I'm saying everyone else is thinking, I'm thinking it. Like I don't like Boston, but the way that they're winning like this, like come on.
Yeah. I mean, so game 2 was one of those false close games where the Mavs made that run late. And then game 3 was a fun ending there with the Mavericks coming back. That was awesome.
Yes.
That's really the only really close ending that we have gotten so far in this series. We've been yearning to have that legendary finals moment because
Oh,
it's really been a while since we had it. We didn't really get any particular moments last year in the Nuggets Heat series. I mean, we had some crazy games from Jokic and Murray, but not really any crazy one moment that you really remember from
no.
that series. It's been a couple of years since we've really had that. I'm just glad that it's not a sweep.
Yes.
Because it's when you look at the course of history as far as like finals sweeps that have happened, the last ones that have happened, 2018 the Warriors over the Cavs, 2007 the Spurs over the Cavs, and and we can even go 2002 that Lakers dynasty over the Nets. Something that you can notice
Oh
with
yeah.
those three teams is that the Nets and the two Cavs teams, there is a supreme talent differential between the team that got swept and the team that won. So, and I feel like it really isn't that crazy with the Mavs and the Celtics. It isn't that large as far as talent discrepancy. So it would have been weird if this had ended in a sweep, and it wouldn't have looked good on Luca at all if they had gotten swept in the fashion that it was looking like they could have.
I agree with that. Not to mention, all three of those teams that you mentioned that swept. Also, all three of them were dynasties. The Spurs won that Spurs franchise won 10 finals in like 10 years or something like that, or 5 finals in like 10 years. And then
We all know the
Lakers,
Warriors.
and then the
Yeah.
Warriors, like we know about that. We know about all of them. If this was a sweep, that would have not boded well for a lot of us Boston haters. It would have been like, oh no, here we go, another Boston dynasty on the horizon.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't have been good. But I definitely hope that the Mavericks could come back and make history here because 3-0, it has to happen at some point where a team comes back and wins. Like it's happened 100, we've had 156 instances of this, 156 times where the team down 0-3 loses the series. We were close last year with the Celtics coming back against the Heat. It has to happen at some point. It's just whether it will be this series or
Yeah,
something down the line. We will find out. Um,
I would love that. I know when we talk about like the greatest of all time conversation, if Luca comes back from 3-0,
against this Boston
I
team,
think that counts as two of Jordan's rings. I think that one ring counts as two of Jordan's.
it'd be unprecedented. It really would be, especially the Celtics. They haven't lost, I believe, more than 3 games in a row all season. Maybe even more than 2 games in a row all season. Like this is a great Boston Celtics team, and I would expect them to close this out on Monday. But definitely hoping that it's competitive. One thing I think that no, people probably will be talking about it more in the coming days, but the fact that Luka Doncic has the highest scoring average when facing elimination in history at 35 points per game over Michael Jordan, just over Michael Jordan, but more than anyone else in NBA history. And now every game for the rest of the series is going to be an elimination game. So we could see some great performances from
we,
Luca.
we could be in for some legendary performances out of this kid.
Because this was going to be more than 29 points, but I mean it was such a blowout. Obviously, didn't have to play the
Yeah.
fourth. So you're going to bet that I would be very surprised if he had another disappointing game like he did in Game 3. I'd be very surprised.
So for official preview or prediction for the game, are you taking Boston? Like you said, you think Boston's going to close it out in front of the home crowd?
I I think it'll be a close one, and Boston will pull it out. Um, I do think that Kyrie Irving is going to have a very good game. I think that after those first 2 games in Boston, he's very happy to go back there and try to put on a Kyrie-esque performance because we really didn't have that the first 2 games. It's crazy when you talk about social media how we went from Kyrie and Luca, maybe the greatest backcourt we've ever seen in NBA history, to those 2 games, and it's like Luca has no help. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It
Literally.
makes no sense. It makes no sense. And Kyrie really played well these last 2 games, so I think that both of those 2 guys are going to play well in Game 5. And who knows? I think that this is going to be one of the better finals games that we've seen in the last few years. I am really excited for this game.
I also think my heart is saying Dallas because I want it to keep going. I want them to
We'll
make
be rooting for
history.
Dallas all the way.
100%. Shout out Dallas. You're sleeping somewhere around the house. But my brain is saying Boston. I'm with you though. Like I said, I think the momentum from Dallas is going to get the rest of the guys going. I think this might be the most competitive finals game we've seen in the last 2 years, for sure. I think this is going to be a big game. but I do think Boston closes out at home, and I think that crowd goes wild.
Yeah, that probably is what's going to happen. But who knows? We will find out soon enough. Again, Game 5, Monday night, 8:30 on ABC. Mavericks trying to force Game 6. I think the big thing is, I'm sure not a lot of people are going to be, thinking, all right, the Mavs, they'll have a chance of coming back. Because, of course, it's 3-0. They won one game. We've seen this before where it ends in a gentleman's sweep. But if the Mavs can win Game 5 and this goes to Game 6 in Dallas, that's when things start to get very interesting.
That's when everyone starts thinking, okay, I'm not even thinking about Game 6. We're talking about the two best words in sports, Game 7.
Right, right, exactly. Well, not a whole lot of other news around the NBA, so I guess this is just going to be a short pod, and we'll see how you guys like the shorter pod. I know a lot of ours are around that hour mark. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe for more, hopefully NBA Finals content. Leave a comment with your thoughts from this Game 4 thrashing of the NBA Finals. If the Mavs can come back in this series, or will the Celtics close it out on Monday night in Game 5? Thank you again so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will catch you in the next one.
Peace.